I ruined a first date last month because I couldn't stop fixing my hair. Every time there was a pause in conversation, my hand would go up, tucking it behind my ear, smoothing it down, checking if it still had volume. He noticed. I could tell by the way he started looking everywhere except at me. Walking home that night, I realized something that made my stomach drop. I've been doing this my entire life, not just with my hair, with everything. Constantly adjusting, fixing, monitoring how I look instead of actually being present. And it hit me that while I'm obsessing over whether my outfit looks good, I'm completely missing the thing that actually makes someone attractive. I started paying attention to people I found magnetic. And not Instagram models or celebrities, real people I'd met who had this thing where you just wanted to be around them. My friend's mom who's 58 and has everyone at parties gravitating toward her. This guy at my gym who's maybe a 6 physically but has 3 people asking for his number every week. My coworker who gets promoted constantly despite being the least qualified on paper. None of them were trying hard. That was the thing. They weren't monitoring themselves. They weren't performing. They were just present. So I did something weird. I started interviewing them, literally asking, "What's your secret?" And you know what? Not one of them mentioned skincare. Not one talked about their workout routine. They all said versions of the same thing. They'd stopped caring about impressing people and started caring about connecting with people. That answer pissed me off at first because it sounded like one of those useless inspirational quotes. But I kept digging, and I found 7 specific measurable things these magnetic people were doing that anyone can copy. Nothing costs money, but everything requires you to get uncomfortable. I tested all of them for 90 days. I'm going to walk you through exactly what I did, what changed, and why it works according to actual research. But I'm warning you, this isn't about buying something or following a routine for 2 weeks. This is about fundamentally changing how you exist around other people. First thing, you need to understand that your face is lying about how you feel, and people believe your face over your words every single time. I learned this from my therapist when I was complaining that people always ask if I'm mad when I'm just thinking. She had me stand in front of a mirror and relax my face completely. Just let it rest. What I saw shocked me. I looked angry. My default expression, the face I make when I'm doing nothing, looks pissed off. Turns out there's a term for this, resting face bias. Research shows that people make judgments about your personality based on your neutral expression in under 100 milliseconds. And here's the brutal part. Those judgments are sticky. Once someone decides you look unapproachable, it takes 7 positive interactions to override that first impression. I started tracking how often I smiled in normal situations. Getting coffee, no smile. Walking down the street, no smile. Listening to someone talk, no smile. I looked miserable even when I wasn't. So I started forcing myself to smile more. Not fake smiling, but consciously lifting the corners of my mouth slightly when talking to people, when making eye contact with strangers, when listening. It felt insane, like I was doing too much. But within 2 weeks, 3 different people told me I seemed happier lately. I wasn't happier. I just stopped looking like I hated everyone. The weird part? After about a month, I actually did feel happier. There's this thing called the facial feedback hypothesis. Your facial expressions don't just reflect your emotions, they create them. When you smile, even artificially, your brain releases dopamine and serotonin. You're literally hacking your own mood. Here's what I did specifically. Every time I made eye contact with someone, cashier, coworker, a stranger on the street, I'd do this tiny smile, not a full grin, just a slight lift. It takes 0 effort and makes you look warm instead of closed off. Second thing, and this one's going to sound counterintuitive, you need to get slower. Everyone's rushing, talking fast, moving fast, eating fast, and speed reads as anxiety. Anxiety reads as unattractive. I noticed this when I was watching my friend Tom talk to someone at a bar. He was getting hit on constantly and I could not figure out why. He's average looking, average height, works in accounting. But when he talks, he pauses. He takes his time. He's never rushing to fill silence. Meanwhile, I'm over here machine gunning through sentences, terrified of dead air in conversation, and people's eyes glaze over because I sound anxious. There's research on speech rate and perceived confidence. People who speak slightly slower are rated as more thoughtful, more confident, and more trustworthy. Fast talking is associated with nervousness and dishonesty. I started practicing this in low-stakes situations. Ordering food, I'd slow down my words. Answering questions at work, I'd pause before responding instead of jumping in immediately. It felt excruciating at first. Every pause felt like I was wasting people's time. But something shifted. People started actually listening to me. In meetings, my ideas got more traction. In conversations, people leaned in instead of zoning out. The specific technique that helped: after someone asks you a question, count to 2 in your head before answering. Those 2 seconds make you seem thoughtful instead of reactive. And when you're telling a story, pause after important points. Let them land. Third thing, and I wish someone had told me this 10 years ago, you need to stop matching energy with people who drain you. This sounds obvious, but most of us are doing it constantly without realizing. I had this friend who only talked about her problems. Every conversation was her venting, and I'd match that energy, commiserating, adding my own complaints, spiraling into negativity. We'd hang out, and I'd leave feeling worse than before. One day I tried something different. She started complaining about work, and instead of jumping into the negativity spiral, I said, "That sounds really frustrating. What's one good thing that happened this week?" She looked at me like I'd grown a second head, but she answered. And the conversation shifted. But here's what I learned. When you're around negative energy, you have 2 choices: match it and drain yourself, or redirect it and risk the person thinking you're not supportive. Most people choose matching because it feels safer. But the magnetic people I studied, they didn't match. They acknowledged the negative and then gently steered towards something constructive. They didn't fix the problem. They just didn't let the negativity consume the entire interaction. Research on emotional contagion shows that emotions spread between people like viruses. If you're constantly absorbing other people's anxiety and negativity, you become anxious and negative, and that energy is repellent. I started doing this in every interaction. Friend complaining? I'd listen for 2 minutes, validate, then ask about something positive. A coworker spiraling about a mistake? I'd acknowledge it and then ask what they learned or what they do differently. It doesn't make you less supportive. It makes you the person people actually want to be around because you don't amplify their worst feelings. Fourth thing, and this is the one most people skip, you need to fix your relationship with silence. Because the way you handle silence in conversation tells people everything about your confidence. I used to panic in silence. Someone would stop talking and I'd immediately fill the gap with anything. A question, a joke, a random observation. I thought silence meant the conversation was dying and it was my job to resuscitate it. Then I watched my coworker Maya in meetings. Someone would finish presenting and there'd be this pause. Everyone else would jump in with comments or questions. Maya would just sit there, 5 seconds, 10 seconds. Then she'd speak. And everyone listened. Because the pause made it seem like whatever she was about to say was considered, thoughtful, worth waiting for. I started experimenting with this. In conversations, when there was a pause, I'd count to 3 before speaking. Just 3 seconds. It felt like an eternity. But people started treating my words differently, like they mattered more. Because I wasn't throwing words around anxiously, I was choosing them. Research on conversational dynamics shows that people who are comfortable with silence are perceived as more confident and higher status. Rushing to fill silence signals insecurity. The practice: next conversation you have, let there be 1 pause, just 1. And don't fill it immediately. Count to 3. See what happens. The other person might fill it, or they might wait for you. Either way, you're training yourself to be comfortable in the gap. Fifth thing, you need to stop explaining yourself so much. This was a hard one for me because I'm a chronic over-explainer. Someone asks me a question and I give them a paragraph when they wanted a sentence. I noticed that the most magnetic people I knew answered questions simply and stopped talking. They didn't justify or over-explain or fill in every detail. They'd answer and then wait. Meanwhile, I'm giving people my full reasoning, my thought process, 3 examples, and a disclaimer. And their eyes are glazing over because it's too much information. There's this concept in psychology called the information gap theory. When you over-explain, you're actually reducing your credibility because it signals insecurity. You sound like you're trying to convince them, which makes them doubt you. I started practicing 1-sentence answers. Someone asks, "How was your weekend?" Old me. "It was good. I didn't do much, just stayed in mostly. I was really tired from the week, so I just watched some shows and cleaned a little bit." New me. "It was good. I needed the rest." Full stop. If they want more information, they'll ask. This applies to everything. Setting a boundary. State it once, don't explain. Declining an invitation. "I can't make it" is a complete sentence. Giving your opinion. Say it and stop. The change was immediate. People started respecting my words more because I wasn't diluting them with unnecessary explanation. The 6th thing, and this one transformed how I show up in groups, you need to ask better questions. Not more questions, better ones. I used to think being a good conversationalist meant asking lots of questions, so I'd rapid fire through them. "Where are you from? What do you do? How do you know so-and-so?" All surface level, all boring. Then I started noticing that magnetic people asked 1 or 2 questions, but they were good ones. Questions that made you actually think. Instead of "What do you do?" they'd ask, "What's something you're working on that you're excited about?" Instead of "How was your weekend?" they'd ask, "What's the best thing that happened to you recently?" These questions do something different. They bypass small talk and go straight to what the person actually cares about. And when someone gets to talk about something they're genuinely excited about, their whole energy changes. I started keeping a note on my phone with interesting questions, not to memorize them, but to train my brain to think differently. And I'd try 1 per conversation. The results were insane. Conversations that used to die after 5 minutes were lasting 30, 40 minutes. People were opening up in ways they normally wouldn't. The technique, before you ask a question, ask yourself, will this answer tell me something unique about this person, or will it tell me something I could learn about anyone? If it's the latter, dig deeper. Last thing, and this is the one that matters most, you need to stop performing and start participating. This is hard to explain, but I'll try. Most of us move through social situations performing a version of ourselves we think people will like. We monitor how we're coming across. We adjust our personality based on who's in the room. We're constantly evaluating. Am I being too much? Too quiet? Too boring? This constant self-monitoring takes you out of the moment. And when you're not present, people can feel it. You're talking to them, but you're not actually there. You're in your head, managing your image. Magnetic people aren't performing. They're just there, fully engaged, not worried about how they're coming across because they're too focused on the actual interaction. I realized I was doing this constantly. In conversations, half my brain was on what I was saying and half was monitoring how the other person was reacting. Am I talking too much? Do they seem bored? Should I wrap this up? I started practicing single focus attention. When someone was talking, I'd force myself to only think about what they were saying. Not my response, not how I looked, just them. Uncomfortable at first. My brain wanted to multitask. But after a few weeks, conversations started feeling different, easier, more natural, and people started commenting on it. "You're such a good listener. I feel like you really get me." I wasn't doing anything except actually being there. The practice. Next conversation, try this. Every time you notice your brain evaluating how you're coming across, pull your attention back to what the other person is saying. Treat it like meditation. Your mind will wander to self-monitoring. Bring it back to them. Repeat. So here's everything. Smile more than feels natural. You slow down your speech. Don't absorb other people's negative energy. Get comfortable with silence. Stop over-explaining. Ask questions that matter and stop performing. None of this requires money. All of it requires you to get out of your own head and actually connect with the people in front of you. The most attractive version of you isn't the one who looks perfect, it's the one who's actually present. Try one of these this week. Let me know in the comments which one you're starting with. And if you want more of this, subscribe. See you in the next one.